We're joined now by Dr. Sean Lang, Senior Lecturer in History at Anglia Ruskin University, Cambridge. Thank you very much for being with us. The British monarchy, of course, stretches back more than a millennium. How do you think the Queen will be remembered in this context?
For many things, I suppose most of all for modernising the monarchy, for changing it imperceptibly but very markedly, as if you compare the monarchy now with the sort of monarchy that she inherited back in 1952, there's a huge difference, both in terms of the aura around it, but also the relationship between the people and the monarchy. It's much closer now, or rather it's sort of more intimate, I suppose, than it was back in the 1940s and 50s. I think also the role as head of the Commonwealth has been a very, very important part of the way in which she's developed the role of the monarch. And of course, that's been central to her conception of what her role in the political world and on the world stage is. So there's been a huge amount of change, and yet at the same time, what she really has represented is continuity. And it's been pointed out quite rightly that the great majority of her subjects have known no other monarch, and you've got to be pretty elderly now, really, to have any memory of having lived under another monarch.
Now, a queen who oversaw a serious decolonisation at the same time, do you think she'll be remembered as fondly in Britain's former colonies?
I think she herself, yes. Obviously, there will always be people who see her as a symbol of colonialism and who will sort of respond negatively on that ground. But in terms of her personal appeal, it's been very strong, really, around the Commonwealth, partly because she's given such an importance to going, to meeting people, and she's developed a very close relationship, of course, with Commonwealth leaders. Again, going back, through these regular meetings that they have, the Commonwealth heads of government meetings, in which she's developed, often a very close friendship with them, which has been enormously useful in terms of sort of political negotiations, talking behind the scenes, smoothing things out, particularly, for example, in the 60s, the decolonisation period, when there was a lot of anger in the Commonwealth about South Africa, about Rhodesia, and about the sort of tensions there. And she played a role there, I think, in really sort of seeing that the Commonwealth idea survived. So I think she's, as I say, there will always be exceptions, but on the whole, I think a very positive image that she's had in her other realms and in other areas which are linked with the Commonwealth.
Dr. Sean Lang, please do stay with us. We're just going to cross briefly now to London, where our correspondent Benedict Pavio is standing by. Benedict, the clock has ticked past midnight there now, but there are still large crowds outside of Buckingham Palace. Tell us about what's going on and what has been going on today in reaction to this news.
Well, what's been going on today is that despite the rain, which has stopped for a short while now, more and more TV crews from all over the world have been arriving, British crews, lots of people spontaneously gathering, coming, some with flowers, some with candles, again, despite the rain, and then sudden applause, singing, and then a moment of real silence as at 6:30 this evening, British time, the flag, the Union Jack that has flown since 1997 and the death of Diana, because previously it was always just the royal standard that was used on that flag mast, went to half-mast. And we knew then that the Queen had died. Those who were right in front of the gates actually saw 2 footmen arrive and put on an easel a very brief announcement confirming officially the death of the 96-year-old monarch. And from that moment on, there was a new monarch, and he is called King Charles III, as we learnt a while later from this new Prime Minister. And what a momentous week it has been in the United Kingdom, where on Tuesday, Boris Johnson, the 14th Prime Minister in the reign of this Queen, stepped down. He went to Balmoral and did that 1,000-mile trip, round trip, to go and tender his resignation to the monarch, because we already knew she was had episodic, we were told, mobility problems and probably had some other health problems. And then she invited Liz Truss, who had just become Conservative leader 24 hours before, to be her 15th Prime Minister. only 48 hours later, we have not just a new Prime Minister, but we have a new monarch, King Charles III, who was the heir to the throne. We have a new heir to the throne. It is his eldest son, Prince William. Tonight, people continue to gather. Some will stay all night. We have the logistical side of Operation London Bridge that has kicked into full flow. We've seen all kinds of deployment of fences now in preparation for the 10 days of mourning. And of course, all flags are at half-mast, not just in Downing Street, but on all ministerial buildings here in London and across the United Kingdom.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to move back to Dr. Sean Lang. So we're talking earlier about the historical context. Of course, if you look back a good amount of time, the monarch was actually in charge of running the country. What is the role of the British monarchy today?
Well, obviously, it's less hands-on in terms of political decision-making, and you're quite right. But you have to go back a long way in history before you, indeed to the 17th century, before you have monarchs enjoying that sort of power, because it was in the 17th century that the idea of limiting the power of the monarchy really quite considerably took root. So that while other countries, like France, had absolutist monarchy, the idea of a constitutional, very limited monarchy was establishing itself. So it's a long history behind the idea of maintaining the monarch as a figurehead, as a sort of unifying force, and also, very importantly, a force above party politics. Because having a monarch means that you are not, as it were, always under the Prime Minister. There is a force in politics above that of the Prime Minister. That's a very reassuring thing to have. And it's a sort of reminder, if you like, that puts Parliament and the politicians in their proper perspective. And I think that sort of political role has been in evidence this week, because she took her political and constitutional duties very seriously. So many people at 96 would have thought they didn't need to sort of appoint a new prime minister, but she's kept to have constitutional duty right to the end. And it has indeed, as your correspondent said, been quite a remarkable week in the life of this country over here. Having a new prime minister, having that appointed, and then a new monarch. So the political role has a long history behind it, but it's a constitutional one which is deeply rooted, and which she very, very much not only understood, but had an instinct for in order to make it work.
Dr. Sean Lang, thank you very much. The Queen going right through to the end, and the British royal family keeping on going through a complex combination of maintaining tradition, along with a good amount of flexibility when necessary. Big changes are now expected with King Charles III on the throne. The monarchy expected to become a leaner operation. Fewer royals will be working on the sovereign grant payroll, the £85 million a year that taxpayers pay to the royals. King Charles and his heir William will be the figureheads.